Hey guys, Justin here at JHart Modelworks, and we are back to work on the Tamiya Gordon Murray Automotive T.50. The paint job is over, it is done, it is no longer consuming all of my thoughts, so we're going to go back to the beginning of the instructions and we're going to take out steps 1 through 5. This is going to cover our back wall and a couple of things that attach to it. It's going to take care of the floor, flocking the carpet, the pedal assemblies, center console stuff, all of our seats, our seat belts, and just a tiny bit of the front end. So it's not a whole lot, but it is a really good logical chunk of steps when you look at the way the instructions are laid out. So let's get this camera flipped around and get to work. Okay, so other than cutting parts off the sprues and sanding off the nubs, there isn't a whole lot of prep, but we do have a bit of modifying to do to add the seat belts. You could just glue ribbon in place, but this kit has so much potential to do them really well. Now, Tamiya gives us 2 parts that go in the back wall, and these are the seatbelt retainers. These parts are hollow enough to hold some ribbon. Now, in my opinion, Tamiya could have molded these open, but instead we just got a little indent where the seatbelt should go. So we're going to start by drilling a 0.9mm hole on each side of the indent, and then using a hobby knife we'll cut the remaining bit out between the 2 holes and clean it up to make a smooth opening for our ribbon to go through. These are very tiny parts, so we need to be really careful not to cut ourselves and not to cut through or cut the part in half. I tried to keep the parts on a bit of sprue for now to make them a little easier to hold and control. And we'll repeat this process for both of the parts. And this is our final result. You can see the difference between what Tamiya gives us on the left here and what the part looks like when it's opened up correctly on the right. The driver's seatbelt should go on the right side of part D35, but there isn't even an indent here. So we're going to set our calipers to just over 2mm because I used 2mm wide ribbon and scratch some marks for the ends of the seatbelt opening. Once we have those marks, we're going to break out our dead center tool from Scale Pro Shop to make a pilot hole on each side of the opening we want to make and put another one right in between them. We're then going to use our 0.9mm drill bit to drill out these 3 holes. We want to be careful not to drill any holes in our fingers. Once we have our holes drilled, we want to use our hobby knife to remove the material between these 3 holes. We don't want to make the opening huge, we just want to carefully cut from one hole to the next, and then gently carve away the plastic to make one long straight line between all 3 holes. We don't want to make this opening any larger than the 0.9mm holes we drilled. Once we've made the opening, we'll cut a thin strip of sandpaper and just pull it back and forth through the hole to smooth everything out and make it look nice and clean. We're going to do a quick test fit here just to make sure that our ribbon pulls through nice and smooth. And then we're going to use a 400 grit sanding paper or a sanding sponge here just to clean the part up from all the marks we put in it when we were making the opening. We have the tops of the seat belts prepared. Now we need to work on the bottoms. The passenger seats drop into the interior frame like this, and the seat belts should go to this small indent on the outside of each seat. We're going to repeat the same process on these seats that we did on the retainers. Drill holes at the ends of the indent, then cut away the material between them to make an opening. And sand it all smooth. Once we're done, make sure that we can pull our ribbon through it with a nice test fit, and we are done with the prep work. At this point, we have all of our parts painted up and we want to flock the interior. Now, Tamiya has a little raised lip around the carpeted area. I've masked that off and I have shot a coat of IJN gray from Tamiya. We're going to be using some of this gunmetal embossing powder. You can get this on Amazon or any craft store like Hobby Lobby. I'm going to load up a spoon with a bunch of this embossing powder. Then I'm going to shoot a really wet coat of IJN gray over the entire floor area, and then we're going to completely cover the wet paint in embossing powder before it can dry. I should have set this down before we started. This is a big piece of white paper. I've folded it in half to make a crease. We want to lay it out flat, and after the paint is dried, we want to tap off all the excess embossing powder. Make sure you get it all off. This stuff will get everywhere if it falls off later at the workbench. Once done, we'll fold our paper up at the crease and use it as a funnel to get the excess powder back into the container. Now we just remove the masking tape and we are done. Most embossing powders I've seen have a metallic sparkle to them, and I'm not fond of that personally. So I like to hit this with a flat clear coat to dull that down. Before we get to assembling, there are a few decals we need to take care of, starting with the two Gordon Murray Automotive logos on the side sills. Tamiya's given us some nice indents to mark where these go. We're just going to dip the decal in some nice warm water. I use a coffee warmer to keep my decal water nice and warm, and apply some microset to the area for the decal and set it into place. Then, using a cotton bud, we'll remove the excess liquid and roll it over the decal to flatten it out and get out any bubbles. There are two of these, so we want to repeat this process for the other side as well. We also have some decals for the pedals. Now the pedals for this car are works of art. I doubt Tamiya could have molded these open like this, so they opted to give us decals for just the black area for the openings. This is really nice. As I've painted the pedals candy orange with no silver in the decal, it doesn't mess up the orange anodized look I'm going for. We're going to follow the same process as always with decals. Get the decal wet, apply some microset, get your decal in place, remove the excess moisture with your cotton bud, and then if necessary, kind of nudge it into place where you want it to go before the decal dries and sets. We got one more long one to place here for the gas pedal. We'll just nudge this back into position since I bumped it out of place with the cotton bud, and our pedals are done, and those look gorgeous. We have one more decal to place, and that is the T.50 logo that goes at the end of the center console. It's too small to read, but I went ahead and placed it anyhow. The rest of the detail on this part is all paint. The decal is a little bit too big for the part in my opinion. After using the micro set to set it in place, I'm going to hit it with some micro sol to soften it up. Microset in the blue bottle is a mild acid similar to vinegar. It actually smells just like vinegar and water. It helps to set the decal in place and helps with adhesion. It softens the decal a little, but not a whole lot. For hard to conform decals, micro sol is a solvent-based solution. Its only purpose is to aggressively soften the decal to help it conform to the part's shape. I use set first and only use sol if I'm having real difficulty getting the decal to conform to the part. You can use heat, and that will help with the microsol and really make the decal soft. But this part is so small that you run a big risk of warping it, so I'm not going to use heat here. Now for the good stuff, it's time to get assembling. We're going to start by setting this black part in place on the back of the firewall. I think these are vents of some sort. The firewall is gold. It's just like with the McLaren F1, this car uses a gold heat shielding. You may notice I'm using a mechanical pencil to apply CA glue. I'm going to be doing that a lot in this video. A 0.5mm mechanical pencil is fantastic for grabbing and placing tiny bits of CA glue exactly where you want it. When you're done or it gets clogged up, just snap off the pencil lead and throw it away. We're going to apply some CA glue to the center part of the back wall here and in these small holes on the sides of the chassis, as well as a tiny little bit on the sides of these locating pins, and then it all just slides perfectly into place. This bar back here is a separate part, but I glued it together before I painted the chassis. It just makes it a lot easier. Next, we're going to assemble the center console. It's not really center, but oh well. We need to glue the two parts of the support structure together with some CA glue and then press them together. Then we can glue the center console to the support. Other than that decal earlier, this is all paint, and other than those silver buttons, it's all masked off and airbrushed. From time to time, I like to try and really push my masking skills. Alright guys, I messed up and I glued the seats in before gluing in the seatbelt retainers, so I had to break these back out. Don't be like me getting in a hurry and doing things in the wrong order. Before we glue on our seatbelt retainers, we need to glue in some ribbon. I'm using 1/16 inch or 2mm wide ribbon for this. I found if you cut the ribbon in a sharp angle, it's easier to work that small point into your opening and then pull it through. We're going to start by inserting the ribbon through from the inside of the part. We're then going to pull it through until there's just enough ribbon to glue down without it sticking out the end. We're just going to add a tiny drop of CA glue here and then press the ribbon down to set. There are two mounting holes on the back wall for the retainers. These are the two furthest to the outside. The others are for the headrests. We want to add a tiny drop of CA glue to each of these and then carefully set the retainers in place so the locating pins drop into the holes. If located correctly, it should look like the part spans the corner between the back and the side. Now we can glue the back seat in. We're going to put a little bit of glue on the top edge as well as right underneath this ledge on the bottom and then drop it into place. Next, we want to add a seatbelt tongue to the ribbon. I'm using photo etch tongues from Model Car Garage. Before cutting them off the fret, I like to press a piece of tape to the back of the photo etch. This reduces the chance that your PE part will fly off into outer space. Next, we want to slide the tongue over our ribbon. Make sure we get it on the right way. We want the tongue to point up, like to the outside, and not get pinned between the ribbon and the seat. As we work with the ribbon, the ends get frayed a lot, and that makes it hard to get through openings. So I always cut my ribbon long so I can recut it again and again and keep getting nice, smooth edges and sharp points. Now we want to pull our ribbon through the hole we made in the seat. Make sure, again, that the ribbon is facing the right way and it doesn't get all twisted up. After we make our final adjustments, we'll glue the ribbon down to the inside and cut off the excess. I glued mine to the side of the seat on the inside just in case there wasn't enough clearance between the seat and the floor later. I should have done this before installing the belt to the seat. Now I need to be careful with my glue, but we want to put a tiny dab of glue on the back side of the ribbon where the back of the tongue hits the ribbon to hold the tongue in place so it doesn't fall to the bottom of the ribbon. And next we're just going to repeat that process for the other seat. There are 3 more holes on the back on each side, and like I said earlier, these are for the headrests. We're going to put a tiny dot of glue in each of these holes, and we're going to install the headrest. Make sure the wide end goes to the bottom. After adding your glue, when you slide the part in place, the little pins on the back should just drop right into the holes. We aren't quite done with these seats yet. I want to take our mechanical pencil and some Vallejo black. I'm going to add some black to the other side where the latch opening is. Then using a brush, I decided to go ahead and paint the entire indented area on this side. I think it gives it a great contrast. Once you're done, you can just clean up any excess with a wet cotton bud. That's the nice part about using a water-based acrylic over a lacquer base. Next, we're going to apply some CA glue to the floor, as well as these 2 small side pieces on the front of the cockpit. And we're just going to drop this into place and marry the sides of the cockpit to the floor. It should mount up pretty easy, but I found if you tried real hard, you could get it to mount wrong, so just make sure you get it right. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of Tamiya extra thin to these sides here that'll never get seen, but it will give me a nice stronger bond as it fuses them together. On to the pedal assemblies. I'm going to use some Tamiya extra thin to mount the pedals in place, starting with this dead pedal. It should glue up against the side of the cockpit. The fit for the dead pedal is really weird, and it's very willing to sit wrong if you don't put it in correctly. After that, we're going to add a little more Tamiya extra thin to mount the pedals. While building the GT40, it gave me a lot more respect for Tamiya extra thin. Speaking of the GT40, I haven't forgotten, the final is coming. Chris just has some odds and ends like decals to wrap up. Now the pedals fought me a little getting in there, but we got them in place and they look great. Next, we have the front wall and the start of the front suspension arms. There are 2 mounting holes on the sides and a little tab in the center. On the suspension arms, there's a notch on the back of the center part. This notch needs to face down and the arms go up to the sides. It is possible to kind of force this part upside down, and if you do get this in wrong, your suspension won't connect up to it later. We'll add some Tamiya extra thin to the front of the interior here, as well as to the back of the wall part. Then we'll set it in place and add a little more glue to these sides where they meet. Before we glue in the front seat, we want to glue the center console into the right side of the tub. We'll apply some Tamiya extra thin to the interior tub here and on the bottom of the part. And then the console should just slide into the notch for it on the tub. We're going to repeat that process for the handbrake on the other side. This part was supposed to be painted black. I was torn between doing it gray and metallic orange like the pedals. I decided to do the IJ in gray. I kind of wish I had done the anodized orange, but the gray works too. As long as it's not black, there's too much black in this interior. Also, before we install the seat, we have to build it. Tamiya made the seat padding separate from the seat base, making them much easier to paint in a contrast color. There's supposed to be a black decal that runs up the center of the seat. I chose not to use it, instead painting that stripe in IJ in gray to tie in with the rear seats. Using some CA glue, we're going to glue the seat and the back into the seat chassis and then add in the headrest. I got a little too much glue in here, so I'm going to remove the excess with a cotton bud and then just set that headrest in place. All of this slots in perfectly into position. Now we're going to just add some CA glue to this spot on the floor. It's neatly marked out, and that seat just drops right into place. Now we're going to cut some black ribbon and feed it through the opening we made on the center part of the back wall. Once we get the ribbon fed through, we're going to add some CA glue to the underside of the part and press the ribbon into the glue. There is plenty of space in here for this. We also want to add a tiny drop of glue to the outside right under the ribbon so that it won't get seen. This is just going to pull the ribbon down so that it comes out nice and taut looking and doesn't shoot up into the air in a weird arc. So I kind of messed up again. I should have done the driver's seat belt and the center part of the back wall before putting the driver's seat in place, but we do manage to go in and get it to sit correctly, so it's not really the end of the world. A little careful wiggling and it'll go right into place. Now, on the right side of the seat, there's this little raised ridge. This is actually the seatbelt retainer. There should be an opening in here for the seatbelt to go through, but it's too thin. So we're just going to glue the belt in place on top of it. Then, we'll add another seatbelt tongue on the ribbon and add a little glue to the back to hold it in place. We didn't cut open the seat for the seatbelt this time, but that's okay. We're going to add a little CA glue to the side right above the seat padding in this corner, and we're going to glue the seatbelt down as tight as we can to the seat padding. Then we'll come back in and we'll cut off the remaining ribbon. And that wraps up the front seat. The last parts we will add in this section are these side bits. These bits finish off the chassis behind the suspension and finish out the back side of the wheel wells. We'll just apply some Tamiya extra thin to the sides of the cockpit and to these impressions on the underside of the chassis. We'll also add some Tamiya extra thin to the inside of the parts and then press them into place. We'll repeat that process for the other side of the cockpit. And the basic kit assembly portion of this video is done, but we're not through yet. So the car has these storage boxes in the interior that have these door pulls. Now Tamiya gives us decals for these, but I thought we could do better. I wanted to make the actual pulls. You can see I've already done one as like a test, so we're going to make the other one together. I went to Hobby Lobby, and in the scrapbooking section I picked up a roll of orange washi tape. This is essentially the same type of rice paper tape as Tamiya is. It's a little bit thinner, and this roll is even less tacky than Tamiya. I've taken some measurements, and the pulls themselves are about 3 millimeters long. We'll be doubling this over, so to make the loop, we're going to go for a 6 millimeter long cut. We also want a shorter cut of about 4 millimeters for the inside, and the end result needs to be about 1 millimeter wide. So we're going to lay out some tape, and I'm going to set my calipers to 4 millimeters and drag them along this edge. This is going to scratch in a mark, which I'll use as a cutting guide. We're just going to cut off this 4mm piece here. And next I'm going to cut the remaining piece in half. This tape is thinner than I expected, so I want to double it up to make sure it doesn't look thin or transparent. We'll then stick the 4mm cut of tape down on the larger piece on the inside so the sticky sides meet. This creates the inside of our loop and keeps the tape from sticking together when we fold it over in the middle. Next, we're going to cut this long way so we get a straight edge along one side. Then we'll set the calipers to about 1mm and mark our width. And we'll use that to cut the other side of our strap. Okay, with these sharp pliers, or you could use the back side of the hobby knife as well, we'll just open it up and give it a little bit of shape. So it's still a little long, so next we need to cut the length down. And using our mechanical pencil, we're going to apply a tiny drop of CA glue to the indent where the door pull goes. And then we can just press the pull into place. Once we have it set, we'll just flush it back out and reshape it. It may have gotten squished when we glued it down. And now our storage boxes have realistic pulls. Alright guys, that's going to wrap up this video. So far this is going really well, even with all of my mistakes. I like how this is shaping up. I really like the choice to use the Imperial Navy Gray. The kit instructions say to use flat black for the seats against semi-gloss black, and there isn't a lot of contrast between those. Flat black and semi-gloss black, it's all pretty much black. I think the gray looks a lot better. There's a lot more contrast here. I also like how the embossing powder turned out. I think for more modern cars, this embossing powder is a little more realistic than flocking, as modern cars have a tighter carpet weave. And I love the added touch of the door pulls on the storage bins. Even though we probably won't ever see them when this whole thing is together, just like the pedals, which look great in there as well. So yeah, so far it's going together great. From here, the next section I have planned is steps 6 through 9, and that's going to wrap up the front end. Now that doesn't seem like it'll be a very long video. But the section after that is steps 10 through 18, which seems like a lot of steps, but it pretty much just covers the engine. So I'll either have one short video and one longer video, or I may combine them into one big video. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Should I do them both together or separate videos? Feel free to hit me up with any questions or comments as well. I always love interacting with you guys in the comments section. We also have another update coming up on the Lamborghini Silhouette. I actually wrapped that one up on Thanksgiving weekend, and I think it turned out really well. As always, guys, thanks for hanging out and building with me, and I will catch you on the next one.